everybody, and welcome again to the Borderline Podcast with me, your host, Andrew Willox. I hope everybody's doing really well, and I hope everybody's staying safe after Storm Babbitt plunged us for a couple of days, although it's lovely today, isn't it? This is Sunday, by the way, just in case you're Sunday the 22nd of October. Sheesh, 2 months till Crimbo nearly. Anyway, yeah, I hope you're all doing really well. I'm going to just do a little weekly recap. Obviously, it's been a while since I've done a proper podcast topic, so this is what today is going to be about. But as ever, we'll just run through my week. And for a lot of you that follow me across on the Instagram page, you'll know that I've had a bit of a shitter for the last times, although I'm starting to get a little bit better. So I've been back to work this week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Finally got a full 8-hour shift on Friday, thank God. And yeah, that was good. It was nice to be back. Work's important to me, so is routine. Eating a little bit more too. Obviously, when I kind of go through these episodes, my appetite goes totally flat. So that's coming back. And although I'm still kind of dipping, my moods are kind of up and down. I am doing a little bit better. So, and on that, I've honestly received so many messages this week. And thank you so much. More to do with the content as well that I've been creating. If I'm being honest, I've been really doubting myself of late, and that's been kind of getting me down too. So it was really, really, really nice and unexpected to get some messages out the blue regarding that. And I've had a lot of good conversations with people that have been struggling a little bit now too, and it's good to exchange them. It's good to have these conversations. It's healthy. It's healthy to address the situation. So, we're coming up to November, and obviously this podcast is all about raising awareness. So I kind of thought we'd do a special episodes, kind of linked to specific mental illnesses and whatnot. And I'm going to start to the root of mine anyway in this episode, and that is talk about anxiety. And obviously, a lot of you know that I've been a sufferer from anxiety. So I just put out the post on the other night from what did we say, September 2009, roughly, is I think the time scale that I've agreed that is when Judith decided to plague me with all of her sin. Unsullied no more I shall be after that day. So what is anxiety? Because there's so many loose terms for anxiety. If we want to talk about like normal anxiety, normal anxiety could be because you've got a meeting at work that you're kind of nervous about, or you got a speech, or you're having to go on a plane or a roller coaster, kind of normal anxiety. Nerves, we need to separate what is nerves versus what is anxiety, because anxiety as a disorder is completely different to maybe perpetual anxiety, that you're not looking forward to something. So anxiety as a disorder, what is it? So anxiety is basically a response from your limbic system from when it detects danger. It feels under threat, and that response is fight or flight. I know a lot of you have heard this before. Anyway, it's maybe you're a first time listener wanting to listen in and learn a little bit about mental health. That's great. So fight or flight response, the best way that I can kind of summarize that is back in the day, in the old ice age, what cavemen would have been out looking for their deer or whatever woolly mammoth that they used to hunt. And obviously they'd come across the old saber-toothed tiger. Now, when they'd come across the saber-toothed tiger, they'd be down to two choices. They either fight it or they run away. And that is exactly what's happening to your body when you're hitting a state of anxiety. It kind of goes into this little shock, and it doesn't really know what to do. And the reasons you'll feel this is because obviously if your body kind of hits that fight or flight response, it's going to pound you full of adrenaline. So you're kind of geared up for that, to take off and run or to fight and defend yourself. So that's why you kind of get that amped, and that the nerves really take over. The kind of the irrationalization, shall we say, takes over when you start kind of an anxiety episode, because there is hormones getting introduced to your system that are at a higher level than what they usually are. So triggers can be all sorts of things, because obviously there's so many different types of anxiety. So we could start with obviously a generalized anxiety disorder. I think that's probably the most common that would be diagnosed by doctors and clinicians, physicians, whatever you want to call them. And yeah, that kind of encompasses obviously a lot of different types of anxieties. If it's not really quite specific, maybe there's a lot of different triggers. You don't really understand what your triggers are. So you fall into the generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD, it's called for short. So another really common one as well, social anxiety disorder. That's something that I've suffered with quite badly, and it's really not a fun one. Obviously, it kind of gives it away in the name. It's anxiety over social certain social events, and they're not, if somebody, just say I suffer from social anxiety, and somebody else suffers from social anxiety, we don't have the same fears of the same social events. It's all to do with, if something happened in the past, could that trigger your anxiety? A chemical imbalance that you just quite can't understand yet. There's all these different situations that anxiety attacks us in, and everybody's different. So that's really important if you're speaking to somebody or you're listening to somebody that's talking about their anxiety, is that not everybody's the same, and we have to be really open to that. Is that yes, there are ways to address and there are ways to fix these issues to people that suffer with anxiety, but you have to be so open-minded on the spectrum that when we deal with stuff like this. So another one that maybe you could kind of closely link to social anxiety would be agoraphobia, and again, that's something that what I'm going to do at the end of this episode is I'm going to talk about like the different types of anxiety and symptoms and whatnot that I felt. So we'll do that later. But agoraphobia is basically obviously the fear of going outside, in an open spaces, whether that be, it doesn't have to obviously then necessarily be a social situation as such. I've had it before that even the thought of even looking outside has been a horrible, horrible thought at the time. It makes you feel really sick, which is obviously very hard to understand. And another thing that's obviously very hard to understand is hypochondria. Hypochondriac. Nism? Is it hypochondrianism? I don't know if that's actually a word. Um, yeah, so obviously we're going to say it's panicking over panicking. You create anxieties in yourself. Not quite in the kind of Munchausen disease. Is that what it's called? Disorder. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. But obviously, because of this anxiety, if you can get a cold, the cold can become worse. You can get a flu, that flu is then a lot worse, and you can pick up obviously in your environments. I'm guessing it would be a horrible time if you're hypochondriac during COVID. I can't imagine what that was like, and it's quite sad because again, it's the people that suffer this do not have the rationale to think normally, and that's the awareness that needs to be addressed for all this. Is that when people suffer, it's it's very easy to make fun of and make those little jokes and digs that for you might be a very easy thing, and you could laugh it off, but you have to understand. Obviously, people don't understand it. Well, we cannot just do it. Can they not just calm themselves down? No, you fucking idiot. They cannot control their brain at that current stage. That's why it's called a fucking illness. Idiots. And something that I get asked commonly is a depression a type of anxiety? No, it's not. Depression's a different beast, a totally different beast entirely. And you can obviously develop depression from anxiety, but the two aren't the same. What I'm going to do is do another episode completely on depression because that's a really important one. That could be huge. And panic disorder, that's another quite common one, I believe, that's starting to become addressed. Is panic disorder, obviously, panicking over panicking. And what's quite common there is that obviously panic attacks are quite common with people that suffer with that for no apparent reason whatsoever. So you kind of have to understand that the distress that people that suffer from this is really distressing because people do not know why it's happening to them unless you've went down the therapy route, which a lot of us can't afford and a lot of us can't do. We don't know why we feel this way, and it's very, very, very hard to try and, I'm not going to say live a normal life, but when you have anxiety, it's in your head. It is in your head, so you think about it all the time, or I do, and that is good to a degree, but that can also be really negative because while you're getting in contact with symptoms, you can overthink these symptoms, and that again can lead to more panic. And obviously, a really, really, really common symptom of people that suffer from anxiety is really bad guts and IBS and whatnot. And that's because there's this constant cortisol production that's almost like I've said the analogy before, it's just like the tap's been left on and it's just dripping into the stomach. And but you can feel cortisol in your stomach. It's a really strong physical pain that I get of anxiety. And I'm sure a lot of you else do. And it's horrible. It's that nervous, horrible stomach's churning. You kind of feel fine, almost like a really bad hangover. But imagine, yeah, there's a good one. Imagine a really horrible stomach hangover 24/7. There you go. In fact, not even that. You would have known why you had the hangover. So imagine you woke up with the exact feelings of a hangover day after day after day and having no fucking idea why you felt like that. That is a day in the life of an anxiety sufferer. What other symptoms? Okay, so actually what I'm going to do here is I've got a full list. This is going to take probably a minute or two. We're going to go through every listed symptom I have found of anxiety. Here we go. So we'll start off with obviously excessive worrying over worrying, which obviously panic attacks. Derealization, which is obviously the feeling of lucid, detached from your surroundings. depersonalization, feeling detached from your own persona and personality, feeling apprehensive, hypochondria, the fear of panic attacks, body checking, you're looking for illnesses, repetitive and looping thoughts, feeling terrified, obsessive thoughts, inability to relax, difficulty completing tasks, feeling hopeless and depressed, overactive imagination, agoraphobia, fear of other people's opinions, fear of embarrassment, fear that you're developing a psychological illness, self analyzing, negative thoughts of isolation, deep level of focus about a person's identity, loss of appetite, big increase in appetite, loss of libido, increase in libido, loss of interest in work, loss of interest in doing the things that were once enjoyable, depressing thoughts, dwelling on thoughts, constantly trying to work out why you feel normal again, constantly feeling tired, dampened sense of humor, an inability to focus. And now we're going to have a little look at some physical symptoms. Okay, so we'll look at some heart palpitations, headaches, lightheadedness, exhaustion, constant lethargy, irregular bowel movements, chest pains, bloating, tickling, fluttering sensation in the chest and esophagus, nausea, sickness, constant pacing, dizziness, perspiration, tinnitus, stomach cramps, eye floaters, symptoms of IBS, rib pains, rib discomfort, stomach rumbling, dry mouth, feeling tired and after eating, abdominal pain, shooting pains in the back and abdomen, neck pain, aches behind the eyes, erectile dysfunction, jaw ache, and tenderness. If you're still with me, that's an exhausted lift that I've read from a book. It's actually what is it? It's Josh Fletcher's anxiety, panicking about panic. There you go. So that's all his. That's a psychologist, and that's all the ones that he's listed. Now, I really don't hope that there's too many people with fucking hypochondria listening or panic disorder because no, you may well have just been triggered. I apologize. I apologize sincerely if that is the case. But as you can see, there's such a broad spectrum, and a lot of people can look at that and think, oh, well, then anything can be anxiety. But again, no, we have to look at the realization that I'm not going to say that somebody from anxiety is always going to suffer 10 times worse and feel the effects, but generally they are. I think we need to be honest with ourselves with that. There's obviously a deep sensitivity issue to certain subjects, and that's in the brain. And I think for me personally, when I first started developing anxiety, the worst one for me is that I always felt like everybody felt like I was anxious and like everybody was looking at me. Not like not like I felt like everybody was looking at me like paranoid like that. I just felt like everybody could tell that when I felt anxious, they could just read it on my face. I must have looked drained. I must have looked awful or something like that. And that gave me a lot of fear and that made me really uncomfortable. So that's a really common one. Um, and like I say, I developed quite a bad social anxiety disorder, so a lot of the things like that all kind of came back to haunt me. Oh. But realistically, the most common symptoms, physical symptoms, I'm just going to focus on just now, are obviously like heart palpitations, chest flutters, that skipping a beat, heart pounding, hyper awareness of the heartbeat feeling that you get, abdominal pains and cramps, your chest pains, tightness in your stomach. You have to remember that your stomach's your second brain in terms of nerve endings. So that's why you feel so much stomach discomfort during anxiety. Derealization as well. So a sense of just total unreality and illusory detachment from surroundings, shutdown of peripheral vision, and difficulty focus. And by the way, I'm reading off my own notes here. That's why it's so in tune. It's not usually my normal mumbling and bumbling. Um, Headaches as well is a really common one. Like headiness, vertigo was a massive one for me. It really felt like I was off balance all the time. That's actually what I thought my anxiety was to begin with, because it really felt like I was so dizzy and off balance. And tinnitus and eye floaters. That's something that I get as well. Is I kind of get these eye migraines, and you can see like it almost looks like, I don't know, like little insects running around your eyes. Sort of. I don't know. I'm a crazy person. Oh no. Um, Lack of energy. Okay, so a lot of people that suffer with anxiety just are spent and exhausted all the time, and that's because you're in that fight and flight response all the time. Adrenaline pumping into your system it's a tiring drug. It's a tiring drug, and accompanied with a stress hormone into that, it ain't a fun combination. Trust me. You think your vodka Red Bulls with your depressant and your stimulant at the same time is a bad idea. Try sticking adrenaline and cortisol in your system, and they come back to me. But the main physical symptom that I want to make everybody so aware of is so simple. It is pain. Anxiety comes with pain for some people, as in physical pain, for aches, stomach aches. The level, I'm going to talk personally, the level of stomach pain that I've had, I find it, honestly, I question, I don't want to kind of big it up into kind of egotistical sense, but I question what other things feel like that because it was so intense. Like, if that was bottom line, then maybe I am just a little fanny. I'm not too sure. Let's say before, imagine you go out and I don't know, maybe you've drank like a liter of Glens or something like that, and with some horrible mixers, some bars, cherried flat mixer or something like that, and you've maybe sank some apple cider vinegar beforehand too. That stomach pain that you're going to get the next day is kind of, I would say, kind of on par with anxiety pain. But like I say, fortunately for your hangover, it's probably going to last one day. People, 2009. Now I'm not saying that I suffered every day like this, but I would probably say around about 10 to 20% of the time I probably have, which is daunting. And aches and pains, horrible. You can get random back aches, and say headaches. I get a lot of like neck tension. That's because I kind of get this little neck twitch. So I'm giving all the spoilers away for my symptoms for later on in the episode. This isn't going to run that much longer. Actually, I've just had little time checks just now. And so yeah, I will actually move on with that to causes of anxiety. And this is a very complex topic on itself. So a lot of people can obviously form anxiety disorders just from their environment that they're living in. Maybe they've got a lot of financial stress. Maybe they've got a health issue. Um, Maybe they've gotten out of a relationship. Maybe they're moving house. Maybe they're starting a new job. All these things that, like I said earlier in the episode, that might start off as kind of nerves, if they're not addressed, and certainly if you then find yourself in a certain area that maybe your chemicals are slightly imbalanced in your head, then it's quite easily going to develop into anxiety disorder. And specifically, you're then going to develop that anxiety order for probably the environment that you first found that state of anxiety in, because obviously you're going to be hypersensitive of what's just happened to you. You're going to realize that your anxiety probably came from that such trigger. And that can be an issue in itself, because if you were somebody that did have a slight chemical imbalance in your body before that, you might not then get to the root cause of that because it would have been blocked by that issue. So that's why it's so important to talk as well, because when you talk, you're going to naturally flow. When I do this at the end of an episode, I can be, oh my god, yeah, kind of light bulb moment, eureka! I can't believe I just thought of that sort of thing, just in my own speech. So when you are speaking, it does help. It helps you understand your anxiety a little bit more. You could also have a traumatic event as a kid or even as an adult. I as well. When I was on about different classifications of anxiety disorders, PTSD falls into that too. But I kind of think I don't like PTSD being in there for specific reasons. That's again kind of like depression. That's another beast that I think needs addressing in a totally different episode to itself. So that's why I left that out. So obviously trauma can create anxieties throughout your life. And for a lot of people, what that happens with, they don't realize that event can trigger an anxiety, and it can just happen one day, such as panic disorder sets in and you have a panic attack, you don't understand why, and it can take years of therapy for you to find that root cause. That can be a reason for anxiety. And of course, there's the chemical imbalance issues for anxiety. So a lot of people that suffer with anxiety are not very good at producing their own serotonin very well. And serotonin basically regulates your mood, your happiness, but also it goes a lot further than that. It's also serotonin aids greatly in your digestion and your sleep cycle too. So that's why a lot of people that struggle with anxiety also again have these stomach issues, and insomnia and lack of energy is a massive issue too, because again it's quite taxing on the body. But I'm not going to go into the boredom of the neurotransmission and whatnot about what serotonin specifically does into the brain. Obviously, we can get around that in the treatment by adding in what's SSRI, which for a lot of people we just call them antidepressants. Although technically, well, yeah, they are just making you not depressed, but they're lowering your anxiety. So basically, what an SSRI will do will it basically starts it makes serotonin for your body. It gets passed around with the neurotransmitters, and then your mood should stabilize through that. Your anxiety level should drop, your sleep should improve, your digestion should get better, and generally your quality of life should improve, which is, it is the case. The majority of the time, most of the people that go on SSRIs are generally quite good for the rest of their life. What again brings in another fault to itself, because a lot of people, when people go on antidepressants, I have no problem with the idea that I might have to take this for the rest of my life. It's quite simple. If I had a sore throat, the doctors didn't really know what to do with, but they says, tell you what, Andrew, if you take a paracetamol in the morning, you're not going to have a fucking sore foot all day. I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to be judged. There's no difference between that and any sort of medication for your brain, okay? And there's obviously there's such a whole host of different types of antidepressants. So if you try one, it has nothing. It might not be not anything. Sorry, like the one previously you've tried. Maybe you've tried something before. Maybe you're going on them for the first time. You don't like the side effects that you're getting off the first one, so you jump into another one. You might not get quite as bad side effects. Maybe you'll get worse side effects, so you can try another. So the list is never just exhausted to your very first antidepressant or SSRI, SNRI if we're talking about venlafaxine. Like I've said before, venlafaxine has norepinephrine in it, which is gives you a little bit of energy as well. So that could potentially be an option to you if you've went to the doctor and you're saying, doctor, I've got really bad anxiety, but also I'm really struggling to get out of bed in the morning. Venlafaxine then might be the best choice for you. So there's if you're if you're ever thinking about going on the medicinal route like that, then speak to your doctor. Um, have a look online as well. You can get a lot of information online, um, off very reputable websites. Don't be worried about misinformation on SSRIs, or there shouldn't be a lot of that. And obviously, more importantly, what to expect about if you are maybe taking these things for the first time, because they do give you side effects, and the side effects can be very intense. Talking from personal standpoint, I would say in the first 2 days of taking citalopram, I've never been so sympathized happy in my entire life. And then after that, God, it was horrible. The aches and pains. I just generally felt like I had the cold for about 3 weeks. Wasn't a very nice time. But maybe you don't want to go down the medicinal route, and that is absolutely fine. A lot of people get freaked out with the idea of putting chemicals into the brain to alter the brain that maybe they don't have control then over. And that's absolutely fine. That can create an anxiety. So if it's not for you, I am not going to sit here and say, naughty, naughty, naughty. You should go and take citalopram or yada yada yada. You don't. Not everybody needs it. So another treatment that is quite often given out for the doctor specifically is cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT). And I know a lot of people will probably know that I am not the biggest fan of CBT, but you have to understand I've done CBT for years, like I say, for 2009, and every time we kind of go back to the doctors, who certainly did, you always had to go down the CBT route again, which CBT is good for what it is. It just doesn't work for me because I've done it so many times, and I'd highly recommend it. It's certainly for anybody that's maybe just understanding, maybe they're just starting to understand their anxiety for the first time and they're looking at different treatments. Maybe you don't want to go down the medicinal route, then certainly CBT is a great choice for you. And there's a load of websites, Beat the Blues, NHS, obviously 24. You're going to get loads. There's so many in your local area too. There's so many helplines you can get on now, and you can do it yourself. CBT is that a type of meditation? No, not quite, but they kind of lie in themselves. It's all about obviously understanding your breathing, understanding your body, becoming at one almost, and it is good. It is good. It helps you embrace it. It helps you embrace your fear slightly because you have to think of your anxiety and how it makes you feel, and talk about it slightly. And you do that internally or externally with CBT. So it is very versatile, and that's why it can work so well for so many people. Uh, Obviously, for those that maybe like me that have tried CBT and you don't really get anything more out of it, I would highly recommend personally more, chakras meditation, transcendental meditation. But a lot of people go down therapy and counseling and whatnot, which again, that is great because if you can get to the root cause of the problem, then good on you. Absolutely fucking fantastic. If you can understand exactly what's causing your anxiety, then generally from there you're going to be on top of it. And that's, I like hearing about people that do have the success stories with anxiety. They're just as good as in any other illness. But of course, there is one more treatment that is 100% proven to work time after time after time. And it's so simple. It's talking about your issue. When you talk about your anxiety, you make it more real for yourself and real for other people. And that straight away, it's then easier to understand, to come to terms with. Now, I know it's really cliche all the time. We are reminded all the time to talk, 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 and it's thrown at us, but it does work. Trust me. The amount of times that even myself, I mean, I am very open, as you know, but I don't talk all the time about what's bothered me, and see when I do, the relief of just getting it off your chest and just being able to vocalize it, not having that internal battle going on all the time, just works so much. So please, guys, the best bit of advice is talk to somebody. So so what I want to kind of do now is I kind of want to go through my kind of little story again with anxiety for anybody that's maybe joined us as well. So I'm not going to go full scale into this. And yeah, so I started suffering from anxiety. It was put on that post every day around about September, October time, 2009. It would have been, and when it started, then like it said earlier in this episode, vertigo would have been one of the first kind of understandings of what I thought it was, other than anxiety, because I had a really kind of light head and I felt generally quite dizzy, and it wasn't like dizziness like you stand up too quick dizziness. It felt like really inside between my ears, if that makes sense. It made me feel really lightheaded and just generally not very nice. But that only really happened, like I say, when it first started happening. Um, more often, even at that, was only maybe happening once every couple of weeks or so. So for me, it never really was a mental health thing. It was just something that was kind of coming and going because I didn't understand mental health at that point whatsoever. But then obviously my symptoms developed into a little bit more nasty, I suppose is the word to use for them. So yeah, so obviously the neck twitch is quite a big one. Whenever I made eye contact with somebody, it really did feel like my neck was going to literally snap off my shoulders. It was a horrible feeling. And generally, whenever I'm kind of coming under anxiety, my main thing that I used to get all the time was like my breathing. That would be getting that horrible feeling where you just want to catch your breath, but you just can't get quite deep enough into your chest. I used to get that all the time. And from there, I used to fake yawn. That was a really common one. A lot of people picked me up on that. Hey, yawning. You're yawning all the time. It's not nice when people pick up at like what you're trying to hide. You can't blame anybody for that. I mean, they don't understand why you're doing that, do they? But I'd say, the three main symptoms, the three really bad symptoms that I really get is obviously stomach upset. Like I've spoke about in before, I make myself sick so many times. As for me, for my anxiety always feels incredibly internal in my stomach, so it really does ratchet up in my stomach quite a bit. Again, like I've said earlier, your stomach is your second brain in terms of nerves and feelings, sensitivity and whatnot that you're going to get down there. So that is why you get that really horrible, painful feeling in your stomach and the cortisol, like we spoke about before. So yeah, generally I make myself sick a hell of a lot when I've got anxiety, which is not recommended. It doesn't get rid of it. It is all in your head. I mean, it really is, because to me at that time, and this is what I'm going on as well, that you try to tell me that I won't listen to you. Like I've made myself sick so many times after anxiety. God forbid I wake up tomorrow by a terrible episode. I'll start making myself sick, because to me again it will be the feeling that I can get rid of it that way, and that's what I mean when there is when people are talking and there's an understanding. You really do have to listen to understand that people cannot sometimes control their actions when they're in this massive heightened state of anxiety, and that's what the awareness needs to grow at now. That it's great that we can speak about this, and it's great that we can have these conversations with one another, but they only really take heed if the awareness goes simultaneously with it, and respected awareness too. It's very easy to be aware of an issue or somebody's issue, but respecting it is another thing that you have to really understand and not get frustrated by it. And I understand that that's very hard for people to understand. I get that, and that is from a lack of awareness. So I could keep on going around here for another hour or so, just keep on going around the lack of awareness issue. That is why I'm doing this. So insomnia as well is probably my second least favorite symptom that I get. Um, I speak about insomnia a lot. I'm quite open about insomnia. When I have really bad episodes, it's not that I don't typically go more than 24 hours without sleep. It's just I can't stay asleep. It's horrible. Like I can literally go to sleep and wake up 15 minutes later, and it feels like I've had an 8 hour sleep, but I don't have the energy as soon as I get up. And you know that feeling when you're really tired, you're like exhausted, tired. It's just like that on repeat every single day until you kind of catch your drift again. Which is it's a disgusting feeling. Everybody knows like how horrible that feeling is when you toss and turn at night, but that every night on repeat is taxing on you. And for me personally, and me honestly, that for me can be the most damaging, because that really does make my mind go into overdrive, and especially when I get exhausted, the depression factor comes back into it. So that's why sleep for me is so massive. I know obviously a lot of people that I work with probably hear every day, well, I've no slept that great. I've had this many hours. I super analyze my sleep because it is so important to me. It's fundamental to me making sure that I feel okay. And I know that for a lot of people that maybe watch my gym videos and I'm, hey, when you're going training at 3 in the morning and whatnot, yeah, that's because I'm at that point of being like, fuck this. I am not lying in bed listening to this shit in my head anymore. I have to get out and do something. So that, trust me, at times, if I could sleep, I fucking would sleep. And finally, the last horrible symptom that I get is obviously the racing thoughts, and they can range from tiny little racing thoughts all the way across to unfortunately suicidal thoughts, and that's why anxiety, although we can look at it as a small issue, the range of what it can do to somebody is on a different scale to anything else, I believe, and that's why it's so important again to go back to the awareness. And racing thoughts, yeah, they're just not fun. Again, like I've spoke about before, uh, I can wake up in the morning. I've used the kind of juice analogy almost to try and explain how it feels, which it is just about exactly how it feels. I suppose there's all this energy and racing thoughts and anger and whatnot going through my heads in the morning, and it feels like the only way I can get that was just kind of explosion of energy in it. It does. It works. It's a nice distraction tactic for me. And I'm not going to spend a great deal of time talking about the range of racing thoughts and whatnot. It's just known that anybody that's suffering at the time, again, they don't have the control. Once again, like again, I've used the God, how many times I'm going to say again in this episode? Fucking hell! And don't think of a polar bear when you close your eyes. Of course, you're going to think of a polar bear as soon as you close your eyes, or once your eyes are closed. The minute that I say the word polar bear, you're going to envision the polar bear. So when you're thinking about anxiety and your mind's racing and you have these racing thoughts, try to tell yourself, don't think of anxiety. You've already told yourself that you're going to avoid thinking of anxiety. So what do you expect your mind to do in that situation when it's already in overdrive? It doesn't work. So I'm not saying embrace the anxiety. Obviously, if you've got ways to calm the anxiety, but I'm not a believer that people can ignore their anxiety. If you can, then that's brilliant. But for me personally, that's something that I've never really been able to do or get my head around, is just to kind of hit the stop button with it. Which is why I named my anxiety Judith, actually. Yeah, a lot of people probably scratch their heads being, well, why are you giving it a name? That's fucking stupid. And I say, bull hockey to that. No, you are stupid. No, you're not really. So I want to detach my anxiety away from me the best way I can, and to do that, I give it a name because it's not Andrew. It's not part of me. It's not who. Sorry, it is part of me, but it's not who I want it to be part of Andrew. So I call it Judith, and that way, whenever Judith comes about, I can tell her in my head, Judith, fuck off right now, okay? I can't be dealing with you, and that's as close that I can get to turning it off, and it works. It has worked for me, I should say. I can't go out and say this works 100%. It's gonna cure your anxieties or whatnot, but and it's a suggestion that's worked for me. It's a because there is a kind of depersonalization that when you get quite bad with anxiety, and that can be really confusing. So it's something. It's just another coping technique that I've used, that when I'm struggling to feel myself anyway, the last thing that I kind of want to feel about myself is this pain and kind of torment that I'm going through. So that it's a really good, I don't know, would you call it escapism, escape tactic? I do it away. Anyway, it works. Doesn't matter what it is by definition. So that it's just a suggestion. Again, I was speaking to people this week and they named my anxieties. It's cool. We're going to start a little family at this point. Even get them a little show or something. And how do I deal with my anxiety? Okay, so obviously I'm on medication. Um, for anybody that's tuned in any ever podcast, is still obviously I'm not too sure whether I'll go down the ever medication route or not just yet, but it's certainly something that's going to be a topic of conversation coming up over the next couple of months, I'm sure. So I'm on a 40 milligrams citalopram. I also take propanolol. I've spoken briefly about propanolol in the past. Propanolol, I realize I mumble. And what am I on? I think they're 10 milligram tablets they come in. Propanolol's quite weak. It slows down the heart, so it's yeah, it's going to really work for you. If one of your symptoms is a racy chest and whatnot, and a regular heartbeat from your anxiety, it's going to help slow that down, maybe help your breathing, and then calm yourself down and whatnot. So yeah, it's not a bad treatment choice. It's just it doesn't really do much for me. I think because what's going on in my head accentuates so much more that's going on in my body when I'm going through these episodes. Propanolol's never going to get close to touching it. Like I'd be open and say that when went down to the doctors before, I've asked them for diazepam just to just to stop it. Just give me a little bit time away from it, please. Yeah, but doctors aren't going to go hand out diazepam willy nilly. By the way, just yeah, don't try that. And obviously, I spoke about CBT earlier and what it's done for me. So it really helped me at the start of my anxiety. It was the very first kind of treatment. But in fact, no, it was the very first treatment that I took, even before going down antidepressants and whatnot. So CBT really works. The way that I used it was I used to hold on to my negative energy by tensing certain areas of my body, and when I breathed out, I'd exhale, and the negativity was a release for me, and it did work. And that kind of started my, I'm not going to say my love or passion, but my interest in meditation, just saying the powers of meditation, because meditation is massive. I'm going to get onto that in a second and what it does for me. So, yeah, CBT is really good as an introduction. That's the best way to put it, I think, is it's a good introduction treatment to anxiety. If you're not quite ready to go down the medication route yet, I would certainly go down the CBT route. And yeah, so meditation for me really helps me understand what's going on in my head because because I struggle with racing thoughts so much. Sass will agree with me. I can go for a rollie just now. I don't know if I said this before. It's usually about 20 minutes that I'm away, even just to go make a rollie, because I go make a rollie. I'm washing the dishes. The cheek of it. I'm gonna get fucking slapped for that. Do I hell wash the dishes? So yeah, maybe go for a rollie. Maybe I'll eat something. I'm really into some popcorn now, so maybe I've ate some popcorn. I'll come back through. I'll go to the toilet. I'll go upstairs. I'll start, putting some clothes away. Then I'll come back down and do a rollie, because I've got all these racing thoughts going on in my head. I'm not actually concentrating on what I'm meant to be doing. So when I come around to meditating for me is another chance at some of these thoughts. You just need to bear with me, because some of the thoughts that are going through my head are quite useful thoughts. So it's a chance for my body or my subconscious to allow them to come back to the front. And obviously, it's time for me to totally relax myself and listen to my body. A lot of people, you can think about what you want with this, but I had a really lovely deep meditation session last week in the bath. Probably went on for, I don't know, nearly an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, and what I came away with was an internal voice of myself saying, to get over this, you're going to have to start trusting yourself and learn to trust yourself, because right now you trust everybody else, but you don't trust yourself, and that's why you're feeling let down at times, within yourself, that is. So that for me, it makes me understand things, and that I get a light bulb moment then going, right, okay, yeah, that actually does hit me. That makes sense to me. I don't trust myself. And I don't mean that in a horrible way. How to explain that? I don't trust myself. I rely a lot on people to make me feel better, if that makes sense. Like, everybody's happiness kind of makes me feel happy. So I need to trust myself to make sure that I can make myself happy again, which I know I can. So it's all sort of things like that. So that's why meditation can work really, really, really well, and I'd highly recommend it. And of course, um, exercise. Okay, gym. Again, I'm not going to talk about the gym too much in this episode, but get out to the gym, moving your body, the challenge. You're going into an area that you don't really want to go in. It's easy for me. I love the gym. I could go to the gym 2 or 3 times a day, every day, if my body allowed it. But I totally understand that some people do not like the gym. They do not like exercise. They just do it because it does help them. It puts them in that frame of mind of going in somewhere and kind of breaking down that barrier. That is absolutely fine. You don't need to love exercise because you go to the gym, and that's really respectful in its own right. And say a lot of people go to the gym purely to train their mind, and that's effectively what. Yeah, I'm not going to say that's 100% what I've been doing recently, but it is the main core of what I've been doing. Just making sure that I feel really good again, and really good about training and listening to my body, and just enjoying myself. Getting in there. Some days I don't really feel up for it, pushing yourself. And one thing that's wonderful about the gym with anxiety is that when you do inevitably start falling in love with the gym, trust me, if you stick it out, you're going to fall in love with the gym. It changes your life outside of the gym. So you start to build all these healthy habits. You forcefully sleep better, you eat better, you're getting all these lovely vitamins into your system, and that's the beauty of the gym, and that's the beauty of the exercise. is that yes, okay, it's great to get out and go and do things, but in turn, you're learning these really good life habits that you can stick at. And once you learn these and develop these, you're not going to have as many issues with anxiety in the future. So I hope that's kind of helped you. A couple of, before I kind of turn off on this episode, there's a couple of things that kind of want to go through. And that's just, things to avoid. I'm 35 and I've not done things the right way since I've struggled with anxiety. So alcohol. Okay, everybody loves alcohol, and I know I'm right. I pretty much stopped drinking as of this year because of what's happened this year. That doesn't mean I'm not going to drink again. Like I've said this to people before. Just now, alcohol is complete take it or leave it. It's more obviously leave it just now. I know it doesn't do me any good, so it's very important for me now to have that sacrifice in my life. And to be honest, I'm feeling so much better for without it. That's why I've not went back to it at all. But you have to now. I know a lot of young people listening obviously don't like to hear this, but yeah, if your mental health is an issue, a really serious issue, you have to be serious about limiting your alcohol consumption. The two do not go hand in hand. It's a depressant. It's going to tie your body down. You're not going to sleep well. Your digestive problems are going to start happening. It's I'm not berating alcohol. I'm not saying, if you do this, you're going to die. You're dancing with the devil and stuff like that. Fuck, I've drank so many times. But in a serious note on mental health, you really should avoid it as much as you can especially when you're feeling down. Do not turn to alcohol as a coping mechanism. I've made that mistake so many times, and it is the worst mistake you will make in terms of anxiety. Obviously, recovery, it's not a good mix, okay? And obviously, if you are taking antidepressants, you take alcohol, you are lowering the effect of the antidepressants. That then obviously can lead to people not really thinking the effectiveness is there of their antidepressants. They stop taking them, and then they end up a hell of a lot worse because the antidepressants was actually kind of helping them a little bit. It was just actually the effect of alcohol with the antidepressant that was making themselves shit. But as people, we don't look to the honest answer. We look to the thing that I don't need that. I introduced that, but it can't be the alcohol, can it? No. And obviously cannabis. So a highly contested debate would obviously be cannabis and mental health. So I'm obviously very transparent and open that I do use cannabis, and the the majority of my cannabis use is for medicinal purpose, or that's the way I think it is. But I want to make a really interesting point that I think will probably ring true to a lot of people listening to this, for those that do use cannabis specifically for anxiety, and that is that if if I come up to you and we're having a conversation about anxiety and you turn around to me and you say, "Yes, Andrew, don't worry, but I smoke Granddaddy Purple at night time because it helps me sleep. It's a nice indica and it cures me of my anxiety." And I think, well, you know what? What a brilliant idea. Who'd have thought that cannabis, after all these years, after all the hate that it would have got, would have cured anxiety? And well, that's just not the case. Cannabis does not cure anxiety. And again, I'm a user of it, but I'll tell you how it is. Um, so you come to me and you tell me that you're smoking this cannabis because it cures your anxiety, and I say, right, okay, well, take it away for 5 days and let's just see what happens. And you take it away for 5 days, and you get to day 3, and you come back and say, look, my symptoms of anxiety is back. I can't sleep. I can't do this. I can't function. It's the cannabis. And I go, okay, you know what? 3 days is enough torture. There you go. Have your cannabis back. You go smoke a joint, and straight away your anxiety goes away. And then you by right, you would turn around and say, see, I told you. Why did you take it away? It cures my anxiety. I said, no, cannabis does not cure your anxiety. All you've do is demonstrated a reliance, a dependability on the cannabis to manage and mask your anxiety symptoms. That's all you've done. CBD does help with depression and anxiety. Okay, THC doesn't in higher doses. Yes, we can look at the science coming out from America and Canada that low dose THC is good at the neurotransmission areas, but we can't fake information just to fit into our own narrative. Okay, again, it's a moderation thing that if you really are struggling mentally, an accession, an increase in your cannabis use is not going to help. It might feel like it's helping at the time, but when you eventually you're going to have to stop smoking as much cannabis, and then you're going to have a problem. So they were, the two common things that I obviously come across and speak about quite often: drugs and cannabis, drugs and drinking cannabis. as the two kind of antagonists, shall we say. Although, as I do take cannabis for my anxiety though, so who the fuck is this guy? At least I know it's not good for me. Yeah. But yeah, we'll probably do a separate discussion on them two topics in time. And this is, yeah, I guess this would be probably this 45 minutes of an episode. Now I think that's plenty of an introduction to anxiety. And what I'd really like to offer now, because I kind of, similar to my little shark series, I do want to make a little mini series out of these. So I want to do another anxiety one where we'll go in and we'll look a little bit deeper into the brain and what's actually happening there, and the responses for your body, because I'm really interested for the biomechanics and the physiology of what happens to your body during this sort of stuff. I don't know if you guys are, but if you want to hear it, then obviously we'll put the podcast together. Obviously, I've spoken about I'll do another episode probably specifically on depression, which again is something that I can speak quite personally of. But for awareness, I also want to bring in obviously some other disorders and illnesses, and some of them that I haven't suffered from. So obviously, I do want to talk about PTSD and complex PTSD, schizophrenia, and all these other little illnesses, and bring up awareness to it, especially for November coming up. So what I do want to offer again is that if you do want to come on, it can be anxiety. It's absolutely no problem. We don't mind redoing this. If you want to come on at any time and tell your story, you are more than welcome to. Obviously, it's obviously only if you feel comfortable to do so. But with Men's Mental Health Month coming up, mental health month, I prefer to say mental health month. I really don't like this men's women's divide thing. Let's just look out for each other. It's so stupid. Obviously, be it exactly who you want to be, but why do we need to have a men's mental health month, a women's mental health month? I seen the other day, and I don't want to bring racism into this. There's programs now of black people's mental health and white people's mental health, and I get there's obviously these subdivides and ethnic communities that obviously are hurt a hell of a lot harder. I'm not being stupid about that and being ignorant, but as a subject as a whole, if we want to raise awareness, let's just do this all fucking together. It's not hard. If you take the problem is just now that, or I think anyway, the reason why anxiety and everything's not taken seriously is because we subdivide it off into all these stupid little brackets like that. So and it makes the numbers seem so low. And if you generally just got a whole number of everybody went, this is their do with anxiety, it would stand out a hell of a lot fucking more than if you got 100,000 people there and 1,700 people with that little ethnic community and whatnot. Okay, we talk about ethnics. Anxiety and depression is primarily a Western problem. It's not so much of an Eastern problem due to family ties, like we spoke about before. So it's internally our problem, and it should be ours to deal with. So I've just been totally ran off there for like 2 minutes. God, see how my racing thoughts go? Mental. So I really hope you just enjoyed this episode. This has been one of my more favorite ones to do. I'm on audio clip 73, so that's how many times I lost my chain of thought today, which isn't bad. That's not bad that I've had to hit pause 73 times. That's an improvement. We are heading in the right direction. So guys, I absolutely love yous. Thank you so much again for all the messages. And until next time, I've been Andrew Willox, and this has been the Borderline Podcast. Good night.